Hey guys, it's Kevin in my review for Honey Boy. And what Honey Boy is essentially about is we center on the character of Otis, and he is this actor that throughout his entire childhood he had this very contentious relationship with his father, and years later he is now being very affected by it. It's made him into a raging alcoholic, and basically now we watch as he tries to come to terms with it, but also try to see the pain that was inflicted on him throughout his childhood. So, Honey Boy overall, I was very excited for this film. And I don't want to say excited because, obviously, of the subject matter, but it was definitely one that I was very interested in and one that I thought could be very affecting in that way, mainly because, not just because of it being a story about, abuse and things like that, but also because this is basically Shia LaBeouf's, allegory for his childhood and him opening up about. And I was excited to see how that was really all going to go down. I was very much applauding him for doing that. And Honey Boy, for the most part, very much did deliver. I think this is a very great film for the most part. I really did love it overall. It's definitely a tough watch, but it is one that I think is overall very rewarding. And we're just getting right now, starting off with the cast. And easily, I think that is the best thing about this entire film. The cast here is truly extraordinary, especially when it comes to Shia LaBeouf, who, holy shit, I mean, look, this has really been, I think, the big comeback year for Shia LaBeouf. He's had, really, good smaller roles in, American Honey and things like that, but this is really the year, I think, where he has shown just how capable of an actor he really is, but I've truly never seen him this good before. Just the fact that he is playing, essentially, his father, I think, alone is a very risky and a really interesting move for sure. It's a really interesting way of him kind of reconciling with his past, but the way he completely transforms into this character is truly extraordinary. I mean, the character he's playing of James is someone who you very much do detest in many scenes, and you very much do, you very much do feel scared of, but you also somehow do understand, and LaBeouf is able to give this character a lot of layers. He's very complex in that way, and I think he just did such an incredible job at playing this guy that is increasingly erratic, but really does care about his son, but has a past that really doesn't let him love him in that way, but the way he's able to completely transform into someone like his father that he clearly had a very difficult relationship with, I can imagine how hard that must be, but LaBeouf just really goes for it here. He does everything in his power to make you simultaneously hate this character, but also really sympathize with him. He gives James surprisingly a lot of layers in the way. He's a very complex character, but he's also someone that really is struggling to have a good relationship with his son in that way, and there's a lot of difficulties that he's facing, and it just overall is one of the best performances that I have seen all year. I really do think this shows just how talented of an actor LaBeouf really is, and I really hope he continues to go for more dynamic roles like this further down the line, because he definitely has the capability in doing so. I think he was just absolutely extraordinary here. But someone else I also absolutely have to credit is Noah Jupe, who, I mean, I've loved him in things like Suburbicon and A Quiet Place, but this, similar to LaBeouf, is easily his best performance I've ever seen him give. I mean, in this film, Otis is someone who really is very much struggling. You can see how much this has affected him in that way, but he also is trying to do what he can to support his dad and things like that, and I just thought overall he did an incredible job in this film. The best scenes easily are when these two are on screen together. It very much is their film in that way, and they just have such an interesting dynamic, and I thought they both just did such incredible work here. You really do feel what Otis is going through throughout this entire film, and a lot of it really is due to Noah Jupe's performance. And then the rest of the cast here also does an incredible job. I mean, Hedges, he's one of the best young actors, I think, working today, and he continues to show just how great he is here as the older Otis, and I think he did a really great job for sure. FKA Twigs, I don't hear a lot of people talking about her, but she has a role very similar to Anna Paquin in The Irishman, in the sense where she doesn't really have a lot of dialogue, but she's still able to convey a lot of emotion, and I think she did a really good job playing the shy girl that strikes up a friendship with the younger Otis, and I really did like her here for sure. I thought Starr was very strong in this film. Really, everyone I thought did a very strong job acting-wise here. But now let's get to the directing and the writing, because that's definitely something that, with a film like this, needed to be done really well, and I thought Alma Har'el's directing overall was very strong. She clearly does care about the story, and I was glad that Shia did not direct it. I think by getting someone who is a little bit more experienced, like Alma, to do it, made far more sense, and I think she did a really good job in portraying the very dark nature, but also being very honest. It doesn't feel, you know, very like overly dark. It feels very honest in that way. Like, this is really what Shia went through, and I think her tone was very well handled here. Everything just feels very natural. You can tell she put a lot of passion into this story, and I think she overall just did a fantastic job here. And then Shia LaBeouf's writing, though, is truly fantastic here. I mean, again, the fact that he was able to tell a story about something as traumatic as his childhood, it's very hard to do, but this is why art is such a important medium in the way, and that's why it's such a special medium, because it helps you to grapple with certain circumstances in your life. This is something that Shia has probably kept inside for a while, and he's now finally getting to, you know, he's now finally getting to, you know, finally getting to release it, finally getting to let others know what happened, and he's no longer hiding anymore. And you can definitely tell from the screenplay. I mean, even though, yes, it is a fictional story, it's very much about LaBeouf's life. I mean, yeah, he changed some things, he definitely took some liberties, but there are blatant references to, you know, what he went through. Even stuff like Even Stevens. I mean, there's a show that Otis is involved in that's very clearly reminiscent of that. Early on in the movie, I mean, the older Otis is shooting what looks like a Transformers film, so you can tell that this is very much about Shia LaBeouf's life, but I like the fact that he didn't try to make this a biopic. I think it would have felt a little bit more self-indulgent if that was the case. Instead, he does what is essentially a, you know, therapy session for himself, but also for us too. I think a lot of people who are going through what the character of Otis is, I think will also find this very relatable. And the way that LaBeouf portrays all of this, again, is very honest. He really doesn't hold back in trying to tell this story in the best way that he possibly can, but also how much sympathy he gives to James as a character. I mean, yeah, Otis is someone that we care for because of how much he's being beaten down and how much he's being abused by his father and things like that, and how his father will frequently chastise him for things, but James we really do care about as well, because even though, yes, James has a temper, and yes, James is definitely not a good father, we also see what he's been through. He's had a very rough past. There's a lot of things in his life that have made him this way. He was a rodeo clown. He's kind of in a deadbeat job. He is someone that a lot of people just don't take seriously. He's kind of unhireable in that sense. So there's a lot that he really is going through. He's not financially stable, and you can see how he takes this aggression out on his son. And the film obviously is not condoning it. It very clearly shows that what James is doing is wrong, but I think it was very smart for LaBeouf to get us to actually care for James and get us to see what he's going through. We really do, while we see the film through Otis's eyes, we also very much do see how James was and how LaBeouf portrays him. Again, he doesn't try to villainize his father very much at all, and it really does just show how much care he put into this script. But then, like I said, the real heart of this film is the character of Otis. I mean, you really do care for him because this is someone who is forced into this situation. He is a child star in this way. He's the one making the income. It's almost a reverse where you can see that James should be the one supporting Otis. Otis is the one supporting James. There's even a scene where we find out that Otis is paying James in that way. Like, he's the one who is providing all of the finance and all of the support that James should be doing for him. And, you know, seeing what he had to go through, how he had to be this child actor, how he had to, you know, do all this other stuff, it's very heartbreaking to watch, but then also seeing how this has affected him in his older life and how this has given him PTSD and how he's kind of going through rehab treatment and things like that. Again, knowing what LaBeouf went through, which from what I understand, he actually wrote this film when he was in rehab. It just feels like this is his way of finally releasing all of that anger, releasing all of that stress, and finally just accepting it, and finally finding a way to move on from it, and kind of just, you know, learn to live with it in that way. Like, yes, it happened, but he's moving on, and he's become a better person from all of this. And I mean, LaBeouf was someone who had a lot of issues for a while. I mean, I remember when there was that whole incident where, like, he had, like, that bag on his head and people didn't know what he was doing. He did, like, that movie marathon of, like, watching all of his movies. So you could tell he was struggling with depression for a while. And I like the fact that he's not hiding it anymore. And again, the fact that he chooses to do it through this story, I think, was brilliantly done in that way, and I really love the way all that was handled. The cinematography, so really, I mean, screenplay in general, I think, is really good, although I will say, I do think some aspects of this film are a little bit underwritten, especially when it comes to the older portion of Otis's life. It isn't as explored as I might have wanted it to be, and I understand that LaBeouf is, you know, still around the same age that Otis is supposed to be in this film, and obviously his life isn't over or anything, it's still ongoing, so I understand that. But the way that he chose to do that part of the story, I just don't think was written as well. There were definitely some effective moments. There's one scene especially where he has there's this very effective scene with him involving him freaking out and things like that, and I thought stuff like that was really well done, and how he finally is accepting, you know, what James did to him. But there were some things that I just felt could have been done a little bit more, you know, could have been handled a little bit better, and I think it would have made the film better overall. I also felt like the character of the shy girl, even though, yes, she is very much someone that Otis depends on, I didn't really feel like she served all that much of a purpose. It feels like she's just kind of here so Otis has someone to talk to, so Otis has someone to depend on in that way, and I feel like they could have fleshed her out more. I understand this is supposed to be a story primarily about Otis and James, and I like the fact that the film is focused, but I just felt that in general, I think the screenplay could have been a little bit tighter in that way. And again, I think that LaBeouf does a really good job for the most part. I give him credit for really trying to flesh out the story, but I just felt there were some aspects that were a little underwritten in that way. But again, the things that are handled great are great. I mean, even the older Otis, the way they handle his PTSD stuff is pretty much perfect. I think they did a really great job with that. And even though, yes, I felt it was a little underwritten, I think they did a really good job with portraying that stuff. He really doesn't hold back. There's a lot of moments that, especially in the third act, really did hit me in a very emotional way that most of the films of this year haven't been able to do. And I think he did a really strong job with that. There's one scene especially involving, you know, Otis finally confronting his father, and it was very hard to watch for sure, but it's mainly because it felt so real. Nothing about it felt Hollywoodized, and that's something I really adored about this film, is that it's just brutally realistic in that way and very honest, and I think they did a really good job with that. The cinematography there here, though, is brilliant. They do a really good job of putting you into this situation. There are some really great shots here for sure that I definitely really did love here, and I think he did, the cinematography here was definitely really well done. The score was also really good here. It's minimal, but when it's used, it's definitely very effective. And the editing, I do think this film is too short. I will definitely say that. I think the film is paced well, but there are some moments where some things felt a little bit too short. When we're cutting back from the older Otis to the younger Otis, it feels a little choppy for sure. I think the editing could have definitely been better. It's much better paced, I'd say, in the second and third act than it is in the very messy first act. But overall, I thought the film was paced pretty well. So yeah, again, in terms of flaws, like I said, besides the fact that I thought the older Otis just wasn't written as well as he could have been, and the whole thing with the shy girl, I didn't really love the ending of this movie. I thought it was very abrupt. I thought that I get what they were going for, but it just felt like LaBeouf needed a way to end the movie, and he just ended it on this random note. There's a conversation that happens, and one, it's very on the nose, which a lot of this movie isn't. I think he did a good job with not making it feel that way, with making it feel like, even though, yes, this is clearly a reference to LaBeouf's life, it still feels grounded in that way, and this was the one scene that didn't really feel that way. And again, apart from that, it just felt like a random scene. It didn't feel like the right way for this movie to end. I feel like this movie needed more of a gut punch in that way, because there are a lot of scenes in this film that are understandably very uncomfortable to watch. There are a lot of scenes in this film that I think are going to be very hard for some people, especially people in this situation. But I think anyone will probably have a pretty strong reaction to this film. And I feel like for a film this heavy, it needed a bigger gut punch in that way, and it just didn't really have that. Overall, though, Honey Boy, I think, is a very effective film. It's a film that really does feel like a therapy session for LaBeouf. It's him finally putting aside those past demons and trying to harness it and reconcile with what happened, and I think overall he did a really great job. LaBeouf's performance as well is very commendable. I've never seen him this good before. He completely transformed himself into his father. It's very effective. Noah Jupe as well. Those two really do anchor the entire film. Hedges is pretty great too, but those two really, I think, are the true stars here. It's a very effective film. It's one that I think is definitely going to leave a big impact on some people. And overall, I definitely really did love Honey Boy, and I'm going to give it a B+. But over, guys, in my review of Honey Boy, let me know what you guys saw this movie overall, left your thoughts, and we'll see you guys in my next video, and we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.